I looked around the room at the people I called my family for 20 years. My adoptive father, Mr. Smith, slammed a stack of papers onto the long mahogany table. His face was red with anger. Beside him, Molly Smith, the real daughter who had only been back for a week, sobbed into a silk handkerchief. "Beverly, how could you?" my father barked. "You embezzled $5 million from the company accounts to sabotage Molly's first project. The police are on their way." I didn't flinch. I stood there in my tailored suit, the same one I wore when I closed the deal that saved this company last year. "I didn't touch that money, Father. If you looked at the digital trail, you would see it leads to Molly's own offshore account." "Lies," my mother screamed, clutching Molly's shoulder. "You are just a parasite who is jealous of our true blood. You've enjoyed our wealth for 20 years as an imposter. Now, you're trying to ruin the daughter we actually birthed." Molly looked up from her handkerchief. For a split second, her crying stopped and she gave me a cold, sharp smirk. "It's okay, Mom," she whispered loudly. "I knew she'd hate me. She's just a seat warmer who doesn't want to leave the throne." My father pointed toward the door. "You're stripped of your title. You're nothing. Get out before the handcuffs are on you." I stayed calm. I felt a buzz in my pocket. It was a text from a blocked number. It said, "The jet is ready. Your 30-day countdown starts now. Let them play their little games. Soon they won't even be worthy to breathe your air." I looked at the window. Down in the street, a black sedan with tinted windows sat idling. Inside that car was Davis Berkey, my biological brother. He was watching this whole meeting on a tablet. He was the son of Berkey Bowers, the richest man on the planet. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just picked up my briefcase. "Fine," I said softly. "I'll leave. But remember this moment. In 30 days, my contract with this family is officially over. When that day comes, don't ask me for a drop of water when your world starts to burn." I walked out of the boardroom without looking back. I had built their empire from nothing, and I knew exactly how to take it all with me. They thought they were throwing away trash, but they were throwing away the only thing keeping them alive. My real life was just beginning. I stood in the center of the Smith Group's boardroom, and for the first time in 20 years, the air felt cold. I had designed this room myself. I had picked the mahogany table and the ergonomic chairs. I had spent countless nights here, fueled by black coffee, turning this company from a struggling local business into a multi-million-dollar empire. But today, the people sitting in those chairs looked at me like I was a stranger. No, they looked at me like I was a criminal. My adoptive father, Mr. Smith, slammed a thick folder onto the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Explain this, Beverly," he growled. His face was a deep shade of purple, the kind of look he usually reserved for incompetent rivals, not the daughter who had saved his skin a dozen times. I didn't reach for the folder. I didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. "It's a falsified bank statement, Father. I've already told you 3 times today. I didn't transfer $5 million to an offshore account. I was in a meeting with the legal team when those transfers were made." "Don't call me Father," he roared. Standing up so quickly, his chair tumbled backward. "You've been an imposter in this house for 2 decades. We gave you everything. We gave you a name, a home, and a high-ranking job. And how do you repay us? By trying to steal the inheritance of our biological daughter?" Beside him, Molly Smith let out a soft, trembling sob. She was wearing a white lace dress that made her look like a fragile doll. She had only been back in the Smith household for 7 days, but she had already mastered the art of looking like a victim. She squeezed a tissue in her hand, her eyes red and puffy. "It's my fault," Molly whimpered, her voice tiny and shaking. "I shouldn't have come back. I knew Beverly would hate me. She's so much smarter and more successful than I am. She probably felt threatened because I'm actually blood-related to you and Mom. I'll just go back to the village. You can keep your money, Beverly. Please, just don't hate me anymore." My adoptive mother, Mrs. Smith, rushed to Molly's side, wrapping her arms around her. She glared at me with a hatred that made my stomach churn. "Look at what you've done to her. She's been through so much, living in poverty while you lived like a princess on our dime. You're a cold, heartless snake, Beverly. We should have known that a child from nowhere would have no loyalty." I looked at my mother. The woman who used to tuck me in, the woman I had bought a villa for in France just last year. She looked at me now as if I were a piece of trash stuck to the bottom of her shoe. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife, but I refused to let them see me bleed. I had learned long ago that in the world of business, showing weakness was an invitation to get crushed. "I am the one who built the Smith Group," I said, my voice steady and low. "Molly hasn't even learned how to read a balance sheet yet. If I wanted to steal $5 million, I would have done it 5 years ago when the company was vulnerable. Why would I do it now, when I own 10% of the shares and have a reputation to protect?" "You won't own those shares for long," Mr. Smith sneered. He pulled a document from his pocket. "This is a rescission of your employment and a forced buyout of your equity. You're fired, Beverly, effective immediately. And because of the morality clause in your contract regarding criminal activity, you're forfeiting your shares for pennies on the dollar." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a coordinated strike. They had waited for their real daughter to return so they could strip me of everything I had worked for. They wanted the empire I built, but they didn't want the girl who built it. "You're giving the CEO position to Molly?" I asked, glancing at the girl who was still crying into her handkerchief. "She doesn't know the difference between an asset and a liability. She'll run this company into the ground in 3 months. Molly looked up then. For a brief second, the tissue moved and I saw her eyes. They weren't sad. They were gleaming with triumph. She gave me a tiny sharp smile that the parents couldn't see. It was a look of pure malice. "I'll learn, Beverly," Molly said, her voice turning sweet again. "Dad and Mom will help me. I might not be a genius like you, but at least I'm family. Blood is thicker than business deals, right?" "Enough talk," Mr. Smith said. He signaled to the 2 security guards standing at the door. "Beverly, pack your personal items. You have 10 minutes to clear out your office. If you're still here after that, I'll have you arrested for trespassing." I stood up slowly. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I knew these people. Once they made up their minds to be cruel, there was no reasoning with them. I turned and walked toward the door, the sound of my heels clicking on the floor, being the only noise in the silent room. As I reached the door, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was an encrypted message from a number I didn't recognize. "The 30-day clock has started," the message read. "The Berkey family does not leave its own in the mud. Let them play their game for 1 more month. On the 31st day, we will come for you, and the world will know who you really are. Be patient, princess." I felt a surge of warmth in my chest. Princess. It was a word my biological brother Davis used to call me in my dreams, though I hadn't seen his face in 20 years. I looked out the large glass windows of the lobby as I walked toward my office. Down on the street, parked across from the building, was a sleek black sedan with pitch-black windows. It didn't belong in this neighborhood. It looked like it belonged to a head of state or a billionaire. I knew Davis was in that car. He was watching. He was waiting. I entered my office and saw Molly already standing there. She was touching my awards on the shelf, her fingers trailing over the Entrepreneur of the Year trophy I had won last month. She didn't look like a crying victim anymore. She looked like a vulture. "It's a nice office," Molly said, not even turning around. "I think I'll change the carpet to pink. And I'm gonna throw all these trophies in the trash. They have your name on them, and I want this place to smell like it belongs to a real Smith." "You can have the office, Molly," I said, grabbing my laptop and a single framed photo of myself as a child. "But you can't have my brain. You can't have my connections, and you definitely can't have my future." Molly laughed. It was a high, shrill sound. "Your future? You're a disgraced thief. By tomorrow, every newspaper in the city will have your face on the front page. No one will hire you. You'll be lucky if you can find a job flipping burgers." I walked up to her, leaning in close. She flinched, thinking I might hit her, but I just smiled. "You should check the server logs, Molly. You were so busy framing me that you forgot I have a backup of every keystroke made in this building. I'm not going to use it today. I'm going to let you enjoy your throne for a while. I want you to feel what it's like to be at the top right before you fall." Her face went pale for a second, but then she sneered. "My parents won't believe a word you say. You're just a fake. Now get out of my sight." I walked out of the Smith Group building with my head held high. The security guards watched me, their faces full of pity. They knew I was the one who paid their salaries. They knew I was the one who made sure they had health insurance. But they were too afraid of Mr. Smith to say anything. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, the black sedan pulled up slowly beside me. The back window rolled down just an inch. I couldn't see the man inside, but I heard his voice. It was deep, calm, and carried the weight of a man who could buy and sell the Smith family 10 times over. "Do you want to come home now, Beverly?" Davis asked. I looked back at the tall glass building. I thought about the 20 years of my life I had poured into those walls. I thought about the parents who had just called me a parasite. "No," I whispered. "Not yet. I have a project to finish. I want to leave them with nothing, just like they tried to leave me." "As you wish," Davis replied. A hand reached out and handed me a small, gold-embossed card. "This is a direct line to our private security and the Berkey legal team. If they touch a single hair on your head, tell me. I'll burn that building to the ground before the sun sets." "I can handle them, Davis," I said. "I know you can," he said. "That's why you're a Berkey. I'll see you in 30 days. Don't be late for your coronation." The window rolled up, and the car sped away, disappearing into the city traffic. I stood there for a moment, the wind blowing through my hair. I had no job, no family, and a criminal accusation hanging over my head. But for the first time in my life, I felt truly powerful. The Smiths thought they had just thrown away their fake daughter. They had no idea they had just declared war on the most powerful family in the world. And they were going to lose everything. I turned and walked toward the subway. I had a meeting with a girl named Sadie Bray. We had a cure to build and a world to change. The Smith family's countdown had officially begun. The subway was crowded, smelling of damp coats and old metal. But I barely noticed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't checking the Smith Group's stock prices or responding to urgent emails from the production floor. I sat on the hard plastic seat, clutching my briefcase, and looked at the gold-embossed card Davis had given me. The name Berkey carried a weight that most people couldn't even imagine. They weren't just rich. They were the foundation of the global economy. And according to that text message, I was one of them. It felt like a dream, but the cold hardness of the card in my hand told me it was very real. I got off at a stop in a quieter part of the city, far from the towering glass skyscrapers of the business district. I walked a few blocks until I found a small, tucked-away spot called the Green Bean Cafe. It was a cozy place with wooden tables and the smell of roasted hazelnut. This was where I was supposed to meet Sadie Bray. As I walked in, a man in a crisp white apron looked up from behind the counter. He had a sharp, observant look. This was Mr. Max, the manager. He gave me a polite nod, but his eyes lingered on me for a second longer than usual, as if he were memorizing my face. "Table for two, miss?" he asked. "I'm meeting someone. Sadie Bray," I replied. He gestured toward a corner booth where a young woman sat buried behind a mountain of notebooks and a laptop covered in science stickers. I walked over and slid into the seat across from her. Sadie looked up, her glasses sliding down her nose. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Beverly, you're late." "Well, only 5 minutes, but in lab time, that's an eternity." "I had a bit of a situation at the office," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I'm officially unemployed." Sadie froze, a fry halfway to her mouth. "What? But you are the office. You built that place. Did they find out about the funding for the lab?" "No," I sighed. "My foster sister Molly framed me for embezzlement. My parents, well, the Smiths, they kicked me out. They didn't even want to hear my side." Sadie slammed her hand on the table, making her coffee jiggle. "Those ungrateful losers. After everything you did for them? We are so close, Beverly. The protein stabilizer is holding. The ALS formula is 90% there. If we lose the funding now, we aren't losing it." I interrupted, leaning forward. "I have enough personal savings to keep us afloat for a month, and after that, let's just say I have a backup plan." Before Sadie could respond, the bell above the cafe door chimed. I looked up and felt my heart skip a beat. Walking toward us was a man who looked like he had stepped off the cover of a luxury magazine. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than the Smiths' entire car collection. He was tall, with dark hair and a jawline that could cut glass. It was Davis Berkey. He didn't look at anyone else in the cafe. He walked straight to our booth. Mr. Max, the manager, stepped forward to intercept him, but Davis simply held up a hand, and Mr. Max immediately backed away with a respectful bow. "May I sit?" Davis asked, his voice smooth and commanding. Sadie was staring at him with her mouth open. Who are you? And why are you wearing a suit in a cafe that sells $5 sandwiches?" "This is Davis," I said softly. "He's a friend." Davis sat down next to me, bringing with him the scent of expensive sandalwood and rain. He looked at the mess of papers on the table, then at Sadie. "You must be the genius working on the neurological regeneration project. I've read your preliminary papers. Impressive work, Dr. Bray." Sadie blinked. "How did you get my papers? Those are locked behind a triple encrypted firewall." Davis gave a small, knowing smile. "Firewalls are just suggestions to the Berkey family. I'm here because my sister shouldn't be sitting in a drafty cafe discussing world-changing science. Beverly, I have a lab in the hills. It has equipment that hasn't even been released to the public yet. Pack your things. You're coming with me." I looked at the gold card on the table. "I told you, Davis, I need to finish this my way. If I disappear into the Berkey mansion now, the Smiths win. They'll tell the world I ran away because I was guilty. They'll tell the world that Molly is the hero and I'm the villain." Davis's expression darkened. "They are already telling the world that. Molly just posted a video on social media. She's crying about how heartbroken she is that her older sister tried to ruin her. The comments are vile, Beverly. They're calling for your arrest." I felt a sting of anger, but I pushed it down. Let them talk. High-stakes stories always have a middle part where the hero is down. It makes the ending more viral. Davis leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't care about viral. I care about you. For 20 years, our mother has cried herself to sleep because we couldn't find you. Now that I have you back, I don't want to see you treated like this. One phone call and I can buy the Smith Group and turn it into a parking lot by noon." "No," I said firmly. "I want them to watch me build something better. I want them to see that I wasn't successful because of their name. I was successful because of who I am." Davis watched me for a long time. Finally, he sighed and leaned back. "You have the Berkey stubbornness. Fine, I will stay in the shadows for now, but I've already taken precautions. Mr. Max?" The cafe manager hurried over. "Yes, Mr. Berkey? This cafe is now under my protection," Davis said. "From this moment on, no one enters this building without being screened. If anyone from the Smith family or the press comes within a block of my sister, handle it." "Understood, sir," Mr. Max said, his posture straightening like a soldier's. I looked at Sadie, who was looking back and forth between us like she was watching a tennis match. "Wait," she whispered. "Did he just say sister?" "Beverly, is this guy? Is he a billionaire?" "He's a lot of things," I said. Davis stood up and adjusted his cuffs. "I've deposited $10 million into a private account for your research, Sadie. It's under a shell company, so the Smiths can't trace it. Consider it a down payment on the future." He turned to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. His touch was warm and steady. 30 days, Beverly. That's all the patience I have. After that, I'm bringing Mom and Dad to see you, and God help anyone who stands in our way." He turned and walked out, his presence leaving a vacuum in the room. The cafe went back to its quiet hum, but everything had changed. Sadie grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. "Beverly? $10 million? Private labs? Is your brother a secret agent or something?" "Something like that," I said, looking at the door where he had vanished. "But we have work to do. If Molly wants to play the victim on social media, let her. We're going to give the world something real to talk about." I spent the next several hours working with Sadie, mapping out the final phase of the ALS drug. We were so close. The formula needed one final ingredient, a rare stabilized enzyme that only a few labs in the world possessed. As the sun began to set, my phone buzzed again. It was a news alert. Breaking: Smith Group announces new CEO. Molly Smith promises a new era of integrity after predecessor's embezzlement scandal. The article featured a photo of Molly and my foster parents standing on the steps of the office. Molly looked radiant, wearing a designer suit that I had bought for myself last month. She was holding a microphone, looking like a saint. I felt a cold, hard knot of determination in my chest. They were celebrating my downfall. They were standing on the foundation I built, acting like they owned the sky. "Enjoy the view, Molly," I whispered to the empty cafe. "Because when you fall, you won't have a safety net. And I'm going to make sure the whole world is watching." I looked at Sadie. "Pack your notebooks. We're moving to a secure location. The Smiths think they've taken everything from me, but they forgot the most important rule of business." "What's that?" Sadie asked. "Never underestimate the person who has nothing left to lose," I said. "Especially when she has a billionaire brother waiting in the wings." We walked out of the cafe, and as we did, I noticed a second black car parked across the street. The driver gave me a subtle nod. Davis wasn't just my brother. He was my guardian. And for the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel like an orphan. I felt like a queen preparing for war. The rain started as a light drizzle but quickly turned into a heavy downpour, matching the cold weight in my chest. I stood under the awning of a closed bookstore, watching the wipers of passing cars flick back and forth. I was waiting for Wiley Fullerton. Wiley was my fiancé, or at least, he had been when I woke up this morning. We had been together for 3 years. He was a rising star in the architectural world, and I had used my connections at the Smith Group to land him his biggest contracts. We were supposed to get married in June. When his silver sports car pulled up to the curb, I felt a flicker of hope. Surely Wiley, of all people, knew my heart. Surely he knew I would never steal from the family that raised me. I climbed into the passenger seat, shivering from the damp air. Wiley didn't look at me. He kept his hands gripped tight on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed straight ahead. "Wiley," I started, my voice soft. "I'm so glad you called. The day has been a nightmare. My parents—" "I heard, Beverly," he interrupted. His voice was clipped and distant. "The whole city has heard. The Smith Group released a statement. They said you were caught red-handed." I flinched. "It's a lie, Wiley. Molly set me up. She's been planning this since the second she walked through the door. You know me. You know how hard I've worked for that company." Wiley finally turned to look at me, but there was no warmth in his eyes. Only judgment. "Do I know you? Because the Beverly I know is a woman who always has a plan. Maybe this was your plan all along. To take the money and run before the real heiress could take her place." "How can you say that?" I whispered, my heart breaking. "I've supported you for 3 years. I believed in you when no one else did." Wiley scoffed and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. He tossed it into my lap. It was the engagement ring. "I think it's best if we end this, Beverly. My firm can't be associated with a corporate thief. My parents are already demanding I distance myself from you." I looked down at the diamond. It looked dull in the gray afternoon light. "You're leaving me when I'm at my lowest? Just because of a rumor?" "It's not just a rumor," Wiley said, his voice rising. "Molly showed me the evidence herself. She reached out to me this afternoon to apologize for what you did. She's actually a very kind person, Beverly. She was worried about me and how this would affect my career. She's the real Smith heiress, and she has a lot more grace than you ever did." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Molly hadn't just taken my job and my parents. She was taking my fiancé too, and Wiley was letting her. He wasn't just leaving me, he was already auditioning for a role by the side of the real princess. "I see," I said, my voice suddenly very cold. I placed the velvet box on the dashboard. "You aren't worried about the truth, Wiley. You're worried about power. You think Molly is the better bet now because she has the Smith name." "She is the Smith name," Wiley snapped. "You're just a girl from an orphanage who got lucky for a while. That luck just ran out. Now, please get out of my car. I have a dinner meeting with Mr. Smith and Molly to discuss the new headquarters design." I didn't say another word. I opened the door and stepped back out into the rain. As the silver car sped away, splashing muddy water onto my shoes, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The life I had built was gone. Every person I thought loved me had turned out to be a fair-weather friend. I pulled out my phone. I had dozens of missed calls and hateful texts from people I used to call friends. I blocked them all. Then I pulled up the contact for Sadie Bray. "Sadie," I said when she picked up. "The mission has changed. We aren't just making a cure, we are building a fortress. Is the secure lab ready? I'm standing in it right now, Sadie said, her voice echoing. Beverly, this place is insane. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. There are guards at the gate and equipment I've only seen in journals. Your brother doesn't play around. I'm on my way, I said. I walked toward the subway, but a black SUV pulled up beside me. The door opened, and a man in a black suit stepped out, holding a large umbrella over my head. Miss Smith. Excuse me, Miss Berkey, the man said respectfully. Mr. Davis instructed us to ensure you didn't have to walk in the rain anymore. Please, allow us to drive you. I looked at the man. He wasn't looking at me with pity. He was looking at me with the loyalty of a soldier. I climbed into the back of the SUV. The interior was silent and smelled of new leather. As we drove through the city, I saw a giant digital billboard over the highway. It showed a photo of Molly Smith smiling brightly. The text read, "The real daughter returns. Molly Smith takes the helm at Smith Group." I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. They think I'm a girl from an orphanage who got lucky, I whispered to the empty car. I thought about Davis and the gold card in my purse. I thought about the Berkey name and the power that was currently waiting for me to claim it. The Smiths and Wiley thought they had stripped me bare, but they had actually stripped away the only things holding me back. I was no longer Beverly Smith, the girl who had to beg for scraps of affection from foster parents. I was Beverly Berkey. When we arrived at the new lab, located in a high-security research park on the edge of the city, Sadie was waiting at the door. She looked at the SUV and then at me. You look different, Sadie said, handing me a white lab coat. I feel different, I replied, slipping the coat on. I just realized that I don't owe anyone anything. Not the Smiths, not Wiley, not this city. Good, Sadie said, leading me inside. Because we just hit a breakthrough. The enzyme stabilized. We have a working prototype of the ALS cure. But we have a problem. We need a human trial, and we need it fast if we want to beat the Smith Group's quarterly presentation. I looked at the blue liquid shimmering in a glass vial. It represented thousands of hours of work. It was the key to my future. The Smiths are planning a huge event at the medical gala in 3 weeks, I said. Molly wants to use it to announce her vision for the company. We're going to let her have her moment. And then we're going to take it away. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Saw you in the rain today, Bev. You look pathetic. Wiley says hi. We're having steak tonight. Hope you enjoy your ramen. I didn't delete the text. I saved it. I wanted to remember exactly how she sounded right now, because in 30 days, the real Heiress would find out what happens when you try to steal a throne that belongs to a Berkey. Sadie, I said, turning back to the lab table. Let's get to work. We have 27 days left until the world changes. I spent the night in the lab, surrounded by the hum of machines and the cold glow of monitors. I didn't think about Wiley's engagement ring or my mother's hateful eyes. I thought about the formula. I thought about the truth. I was no longer hiding. I was preparing. And when I finally stepped back into the light, the Smith family would realize that the trash they threw away was actually the only thing that had been keeping them from falling into the abyss. The weeks of hiding in the shadows of the Berkey lab had turned my skin pale, but my resolve had never been more colorful. Sadie and I were living on caffeine and scientific breakthroughs. We had successfully stabilized the enzyme, and the results were undeniable. We didn't just have a treatment, we had a reset button for a terminal disease. But science required funding, and the medical world required a stage. The Northwell charity auction, I said, looking at the invitation on my tablet. It's the most exclusive event of the year. Every major pharmaceutical head and venture capitalist will be there. It's also where the Smiths plan to show off their new vision for the medical wing of their company. Sadie looked up from her microscope, rubbing her eyes. We don't have an invitation, Beverly. You're a disgraced embezzler, and I'm just a lab rat with messy hair. They won't even let us pass the valet. I smiled, pulling the gold card from my pocket. We aren't going as ourselves, we're going as the primary sponsors. I called the number on the card. Within an hour, a courier arrived with 2 platinum passes. We weren't listed as Beverly and Sadie, We were listed as the representatives of Heiress Holdings, a Berkey shell company that had just donated $5 million to the charity's foundation. The night of the auction, the grand ballroom of the St. Regis was draped in gold and crystal. I wore a floor-length gown of midnight blue silk that felt like water against my skin. My hair was swept back, revealing a pair of sapphire earrings that Davis had sent to the lab that morning with a note. "Wear these. They match the fire in your eyes." As we walked into the room, the hum of conversation was like a physical wall. I saw them immediately. My foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, were holding court near the stage. Beside them stood Molly, wearing a dress that was far too bright and far too expensive. She was laughing, her hand resting on the arm of my former fiancé Wiley. Seeing Wiley hurt, but it was a dull ache now, like an old scar. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, but he also looked small. He was laughing at something Mr. Smith said, looking like a man who had successfully traded his soul for a seat at the right table. "Stay calm," I whispered to Sadie, who was fidgeting with her dress. "We are here for the medicine." The auctioneer began the night, selling off rare paintings and vintage wines. Then he reached the special interest category. "Item 42, the auctioneer announced. "A rare experimental batch of Narration Alpha. Developed by a private lab, this is a one-of-a-kind enzyme stabilizer, specifically designed for advanced neurological research. The starting bid is $500,000. This was it. It wasn't our cure, but it was a chemical precursor we needed to mass-produce our formula. If we got this, we could start helping people within the month." "600,000, a voice called out. I turned. It was Mr. Smith. He was smiling, looking at the crowd. "The Smith Group is dedicated to the future of medicine," he shouted. "700,000, I said, my voice clear and steady. The room went silent. Every head turned toward our table. I saw my foster mother gasp, her hand flying to her throat. Mr. Smith's face turned that familiar shade of purple. Wiley's eyes went wide, and he nearly dropped his champagne flute. But it was Molly who reacted the most. She stepped forward, her eyes narrowing with pure venom. "Beverly, what are you doing here? This is a high society event, not a place for criminals." "I'm here to do business, Molly," I said, not missing a beat. 800,000. 1 million. Mr. Smith roared, pointing a finger at me. "You stole that money from us. Security. Why is this thief allowed to bid?" The auctioneer looked uncomfortable. "Sir, this guest is representing Heiress Holdings. Their credit is more than verified." 1.5 million, I said calmly. Molly marched over to our table, her face twisted. "You're pathetic, Beverly. You think buying some fancy chemicals will make people forget you're trash? You're just trying to play scientist because you're jealous that I'm the one running the company now." She looked at the small, refrigerated display case on the stage that held the vial. "You want that little bottle so badly? You think it's your ticket back into the spotlight?" "It's a miracle of science, Molly," I said. "It can save lives, something you wouldn't understand." "I understand that you're a fake," Molly hissed. She looked at her father and then back at me. "Fine, let her have it. Let her spend all her stolen money on a bottle of juice." The gavel dropped. "Sold to the lady in blue for $1.5 million. I walked up to the stage to sign the paperwork. As the staff handed me the refrigerated case, Molly followed me, her heels clicking loudly on the wooden floor. Wiley followed her, looking like a lost puppy. "You really think you're something, don't you?" Wiley said, his voice full of disdain. "You're just embarrassing yourself, Bev. You should have just taken the hint and disappeared." "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed, Wiley," I said, clutching the case. "I'm the one who just secured the future. What have you done lately besides follow a girl who doesn't even know how to spell architecture?" Molly laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Oh, Beverly, you're so cute when you're desperate. You think this miracle is going to save you? Watch this." Before anyone could react, Molly lunged forward. She didn't grab the case. She grabbed my arm, causing me to stumble. The case slipped from my hands. Time seemed to slow down. The glass slammed against the edge of a marble pedestal and shattered. The rare, glowing blue liquid spilled across the floor, soaking into the expensive carpet. The room gasped. $1.5 million had just been erased in a second. "Oops," Molly said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "I guess I'm just clumsy. My bad." Mrs. Smith came over, laughing. It's just water anyway. Beverly probably paid the auctioneer to lie about what was in it. She's always been a drama queen. I looked down at the floor. The enzyme was gone. The precursor we needed to help thousands of people was drying into the rug because of a girl's petty tantrum. You have no idea what you just did, I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. I saved the world from your lies, Molly shouted, turning to the crowd. Don't believe her. She's a fraud. My family is the only real authority here. I looked at Mr. Smith. He was smirking, proud of his real daughter's boldness. I looked at Wiley. He was looking at the floor, too cowardly to speak. In that moment, I felt a vibration in my clutch. A text from Davis. I saw it all on the security feed. Do you want me to close the doors and end them now? I looked at Molly, who was currently taking a victory sip of wine. I looked at the broken glass. Then I saw something else. On the other side of the room, Dr. Paul, a leading neurologist, was staring at Molly with a very strange, concerned expression. He had a medical folder in his hand. He began walking toward the Smith family, his face pale. No, Davis, I whispered into my phone. Don't close the doors. The show is just getting started. I looked at Molly. You think you won, Molly, but you just destroyed the only thing in this room that could have helped you. Molly rolled her eyes. Please, I'm young, rich, and healthy. I don't need your science, Beverly. I have everything. We'll see, I said. I turned to Sadie, who was heartbroken by the loss of the enzyme. Let's go. We don't need that batch. But we spent all our money, Sadie cried. We didn't spend a dime of our money, I whispered. That was Davis's gift, and he has plenty more, but look at the stage. Dr. Paul had reached Mr. Smith. He whispered something into his ear. Mr. Smith's smirk vanished. He looked at Molly, then back at the doctor. His face went from purple to a ghostly, sickly white. The auction was over, but for the Smith family, the nightmare was just beginning. I walked out of the ballroom, the sound of my own heels echoing like a countdown. The truth was coming, and unlike the enzyme, it couldn't be broken. The aftermath of the auction felt like a cold war. While the Smith Group's PR team worked overtime to spin the accident as a minor mishap involving an unstable chemical, Sadie and I were back in the lab. We weren't mourning the lost enzyme. We were analyzing the footage of the gala, specifically the moment Dr. Paul approached my foster parents. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, Sadie muttered, scrolling through the high-definition freeze frames Davis's security team had sent over. Look at Mr. Smith's hand. It's shaking. He should be shaking, I said, staring at the screen. Molly spent so much time trying to destroy my life that she didn't realize her own body was failing her. That stumbling wasn't just clumsiness to make me drop the case. It was a loss of motor control. Just then, the lab's secure intercom buzzed. It was Mr. Max from the cafe. He sounded urgent. Miss Beverly, there is a man here. He claims to be Mr. Holt, one of your former business partners. He says the Smith Group is in a panic and he needs to speak with the real mastermind behind their success. I looked at Sadie. It's starting. I met Mr. Holt at a neutral location, a private lounge owned by the Berkey family. When he saw me, he didn't look at me with the disdain he'd shown at the gala. He looked desperate. Beverly, thank God, Holt said, wiping sweat from his forehead. The board is in an uproar. After you left, Molly tried to take over the negotiations for the new medical wing. She made a fool of herself. She couldn't answer basic questions about the budget or the science. And then she collapsed. Collapsed? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. In the middle of a meeting with the investors, Holt whispered. She just fell. Her legs gave out. Dr. Paul was called in immediately. They're keeping the diagnosis a secret, but the rumors are leaking. They say it's bad, Beverly. They say it's the same disease your research was targeting. I leaned back. The irony tasted like copper. And let me guess, now that the real heiress is sick, they want the fake one to come back and fix the mess? Mr. Smith is talking about a public apology, Holt admitted. But Molly is throwing a fit. She says she'd rather the company go bankrupt than let you back in. She's convinced you hexed her or switched her vitamins. I didn't have to do anything, Mr. Holt. Nature took its course, and she was too busy being cruel to notice the symptoms. I sent Holt away with a vague promise to think about it, but I already knew my move. I returned to the lab and found Davis waiting for me. He was leaning against a chrome table, looking at a digital report. The Smiths just put in an emergency order for a synthetic replacement of that enzyme you lost at the auction, Davis said. They're desperate. They're offering 10 times the market value. They won't find it, I said. That batch was the only one stabilized for human-grade trials. Everything else on the market is for rats. If they use a substitute, it'll be toxic. They're going to try anyway, Davis warned. Molly's condition is aggressive. She can't walk today. By next week, she won't be able to speak. Our parents want to move in now, Beverly. They want to crush the Smiths for what they did to you. Wait, I said, placing a hand on his arm. The medical gala is in 10 days. It's the biggest stage in the industry. The Smiths are still planning to host it to prove they aren't failing. Let them spend every last cent they have on that event. Let them stand on that stage and lie to the world one last time. The following week was a blur of frantic activity from the Smith camp. I watched from the shadows as they liquidated assets to keep their stock price from crashing. My foster mother sold the villa I had bought her. Mr. Smith took out a high-interest loan from a predatory lender. They were betting everything on a miracle reveal at the gala. Molly, meanwhile, was posting warrior updates on social media, sitting in a wheelchair draped in expensive furs, claiming she was just resting from the stress of being a CEO. She continued to insult me online, calling me a thief who stole her health by causing her stress. 2 days before the gala, I received a frantic call from Wiley. "Beverly, please," he begged. His voice was cracked. She's not good. The doctors say the only hope is the formula you were working on with Sadie Bray. Mr. Smith told me to offer you whatever you want. Money, the company back, an apology. Just give us the cure. I stood in my high-tech lab looking at the final perfected vial of the Berkey Bray ALS cure. It was beautiful, shimmering with a soft, steady light. "I don't want your money, Wiley," I said, "and I certainly don't want that company back. It's a sinking ship." "Are you really that heartless?" Wiley yelled. "She's your sister. She's dying. She's the girl who framed me for a crime, took my home, and laughed while she smashed the medicine that could have saved her life at the auction," I reminded him. "She didn't just smash a vial, Wiley. She smashed her own future because she wanted to see me cry." "I'm not heartless. I'm just a businesswoman who knows the value of a contract, and my contract with the Smiths is over." "You're a monster," Wiley hissed. "No," I said. "I'm the person you told to get out of the car. Remember? I'm just taking your advice." I hung up. The night of the medical gala arrived. It was held at the Grand Hall, the most prestigious venue in the city. The Smiths had spent millions on decorations, trying to hide the smell of desperation with the scent of 10,000 lilies. I arrived with Davis and Sadie. We didn't sneak in. We walked through the front doors as the guests of honor for the Berkey Group. I wore a gown of pure white, looking like a ghost of the woman they had thrown out. On the stage, a curtain pulled back to reveal Molly. She was sitting in a throne-like chair, heavily made up to hide her ghostly pallor. Mr. Smith stood beside her, holding a small vial, the synthetic substitute they had rushed through production. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Smith announced into the microphone, his voice booming but thin. "Tonight, the Smith Group proves its resilience. My daughter Molly has faced a health challenge with the heart of a lion. And tonight, we reveal the cure that will not only save her, but revolutionize the world." The crowd cheered. Molly tried to smile, but the left side of her face wouldn't move. "This," Mr. Smith held up the vial, "is the result of Smith's brilliance." I stood up from the front row. The room went silent. "That isn't a cure, Mr. Smith," I said, my voice amplified by the silent room. "That's a stabilized toxin. If you give that to her, you aren't saving her. You're ensuring she never speaks again." Molly's eyes widened. She tried to point at me, her hand shaking violently. "Liar," she wheezed, the word barely audible. "You... jealous, fake." "I'm not a fake, Molly," I said, walking toward the stage. "But that medicine is. You bought it from a black market lab in Europe because you were too proud to ask for the real thing. You smashed the real thing 3 weeks ago, remember? You laughed while it spilled on the rug." Mr. Smith looked at the vial, then at the investors in the front row. He was trapped. If he admitted I was right, the company died. If he ignored me, his daughter might die. He chose the company. "Ignore her," Smith shouted. "She's a disgraced criminal. Doctor, administer the dose." "Dr. Selma," The fake doctor they had hired to keep appearances stepped forward with a needle. She drew the liquid from the vial. "Beverly, stop this!" Wiley shouted from the wings of the stage. I stood at the base of the stairs, watching. I had tried to warn them. I had given them the truth, and they had spat on it. The needle entered Molly's arm. She winced, her eyes locked onto mine with a look of pure, hateful triumph. She thought she was winning. She thought she was getting the miracle she didn't deserve. Seconds passed. The room held its breath. Then, the triumph in Molly's eyes turned to terror. She let out a choked, gurgling sound. Her body began to convulse. The monitors attached to her chair began to scream with a high-pitched alarm. "Molly!" Mrs. Smith shrieked, running onto the stage. "It's a reaction!" Dr. Paul shouted, running from the audience. "The enzymes are attacking her nervous system. What did you give her?" Mr. Smith stood there, the empty vial slipping from his fingers and shattering on the stage, just like the one Molly had broken. I turned my back on the chaos. I felt Davis's hand on my shoulder, steady and strong. "You warned them," he whispered. "I did," I said, my voice cold and clear. "But they didn't want the truth. They wanted a show, and now the curtains are coming down." As the paramedics rushed in and the investors began to flee the building in a panic, I walked out into the cool night air. The Smith Group was dead. Molly was a victim of her own father's greed. And I was finally, truly free. 30 days are up, Beverly, Davis said, opening the door to a waiting limousine. "Our parents are waiting at the estate. It's time to stop being a Smith." I looked back at the grand hall one last time. The lilies were wilting. The lights were flickering. "I was never a Smith," I said, stepping into the car. "I was just the only one who knew how to build their world. Now, I'm going to build my own." The chaos inside the grand hall was a symphony of sirens and screaming. I stood by the open door of the limousine, watching the flashing red and blue lights reflect off the glass building. Security guards who had once looked down on me were now running in circles, trying to push back the crowd of angry investors and terrified socialites. "Beverly, please, don't leave." I turned to see Wiley running toward the car. His tuxedo jacket was torn, and his hair was a mess. He looked like a man who had just watched his entire future go up in flames. "The doctors say the reaction is permanent," Wiley gasped, clutching the car door. "Molly can't move her legs at all now. The synthetic drug, it caused a massive neural crash. They say only a specialist with your specific research can stabilize her. Mr. Smith is begging you. He'll give you the company back. He'll sign it over tonight." I looked at Wiley, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. "The Smith Group is worth less than the dirt on these tires, Wiley. Why would I want a company that is currently being sued by every person in that building?" "But Molly made her choice at the auction," I said, my voice as cold as the rain. "She chose to destroy the cure to spite me. She chose to lie to her investors. She chose to trust a fake doctor. I am not a miracle worker, Wiley. I am a scientist, and science doesn't care about her excuses." I stepped into the car and closed the door. Davis gave a sharp nod to the driver, and we pulled away, leaving Wiley standing alone in the middle of the street. "You're remarkably calm," Davis said, pouring a glass of sparkling water. "I spent 20 years trying to earn their love," I replied, looking out the window at the city lights. "I realized tonight that they never loved me. They loved what I could do for them. Now that I'm not doing it, I don't exist to them, so they don't exist to me." We arrived at a private medical wing owned by the Berkey family. This wasn't a public hospital. It was a high-tech fortress. Dr. Paul was waiting in the lobby, looking exhausted. He held a tablet with a series of brain scans. "Miss Berkey," he said, acknowledging my new name without a hint of surprise. "I've reviewed the results from the gala. It's exactly as you predicted. The synthetic substitute the Smiths used wasn't just ineffective. It was a neurotoxin. It accelerated the ALS progression by months in a matter of minutes." "Can she be saved?" Sadie asked, stepping out of the car behind me. Dr. Paul sighed. "Saved? Perhaps, but she will never walk again, and her speech will be severely limited. The irony is staggering. If she had let you win that auction, she would be recovering in a week. Now she is a prisoner in her own body." I walked over to a glass partition that looked into a secure observation room. Inside, I saw my foster parents. Mr. Smith was sitting on a plastic chair, his head in his hands. Mrs. Smith was pacing, her face red from crying. They looked small, they looked old. Suddenly, the door to the observation room opened. Mr. Smith looked up and saw me. He scrambled to his feet, rushing to the glass. "Beverly! Beverly, my daughter!" he shouted, his voice muffled by the thick glass. I signaled to the guard to open the intercom. "I am not your daughter, Mr. Smith," I said. "You made that very clear when you had me escorted out by security." "I was wrong. We were confused," he cried, his hands pressed against the glass. "Molly, she's paralyzed, Beverly. The doctors say it's terminal without your help. Please, we'll do anything. We'll go on TV and tell everyone you're innocent. We'll admit we framed you." "You'll do that because you have no other choice," I said. "Not because you're sorry. If Molly were healthy right now, you'd still be calling me a thief." Mrs. Smith pushed her husband aside. "You heartless girl. We raised you. We gave you a life. How can you stand there and watch your sister suffer?" "I'm watching a stranger suffer the consequences of her own malice," I replied. "And as for the life you gave me, I paid for that life 10 times over with the billions I made for your company. We are even." I turned to Dr. Paul. "Give them the standard palliative care. Nothing more, nothing less. If they want the Berkey-Bray cure, they can apply for the clinical trials like everyone else. But tell them the truth. The waiting list is 6 months long." "Beverly, wait," Mr. Smith screamed as I turned to leave. "The creditors are at the door. The bank is seizing the house tomorrow. If you don't help us, we'll be on the street." I stopped and looked back one last time. "Then I suggest you start looking for a small apartment. I hear the ones near the subway are affordable." We walked out of the medical wing and into the quiet of the night. The weight that had been on my shoulders for 20 years was gone. I wasn't waiting for a hammer to drop anymore. The hammer had already fallen, and I was the only one left standing. "What now?" Sadie asked, her eyes bright with the future. "Now," I said, "we launch the company, but not as a wing of the Smiths. We launch it as Aurelia Medical, and we do it under the Berkey banner." Davis smiled, placing an arm around my shoulder. "Welcome home, Beverly. The world is waiting to see what a real heiress looks like." As we drove toward the Berkey estate, a place of light and warmth I had only ever seen in pictures, I checked my phone one last time. The news was already breaking. Smith Group files for bankruptcy. CEO Molly Smith in critical condition after experimental drug failure. I turned off the screen. The story of Beverly Smith ended tonight. Tomorrow, the world would meet Beverly Berkey, and I was going to make sure they never forgot my name. The morning sun hit the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office at the Berkey estate, but the light felt different here. It didn't feel like a spotlight I had to perform under. It felt like a warm welcome. I sat at a desk made of reclaimed oak, looking at a legal document that would officially end my 20-year nightmare. A soft knock came at the door. Davis walked in, followed by a man in a sharp gray suit holding a briefcase. "Beverly, this is Mr. Miller, the head of the Berkey Legal Division," Davis said. "He has the paperwork you requested. The Smiths are downstairs in the reception hall. They've been there since 6 a.m. Mr. Miller stepped forward and laid a single page on the desk. "This is a total severance agreement. By signing this, you legally renounce any tie to the Smith family. In exchange, you are providing a one-time emergency trust that covers their basic living expenses for 5 years. It also includes a non-disclosure agreement. They can never speak your name to the press again." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. "And the criminal charges they filed against me?" "Withdrawn," Miller said with a thin smile. "Once we presented the police with the metadata from Molly's laptop and the recording of the board meeting, they realized the Smiths had committed perjury. Mr. Smith signed the confession an hour ago to avoid immediate jail time." I signed the paper. It felt like a physical weight lifting off my chest. "Let's go see them." The reception hall of the Berkey estate was grander than the entire Smith Group headquarters. My foster parents looked tiny sitting on the velvet sofa, surrounded by marble pillars and gold leaf ceilings. When I walked in, Mr. Smith jumped to his feet. He looked haggard, his suit wrinkled, and his eyes bloodshot. "Beverly, thank God!" He rushed toward me, but 2 Berkey security guards stepped in his way, their faces like stone. "Stay where you are, Mr. Smith," Davis said, his voice echoing in the hall. "Beverly, please," my foster mother sobbed, clutching a damp tissue. The bank took the house this morning. We had to pack our clothes in trash bags. And Molly? She's in a state-run ward now. They don't have the equipment she needs. She can't even hold a spoon, Beverly. She just cries and points at the TV whenever your face comes on. I looked at them. These were the people who had called me a parasite and a fake. These were the people who had watched me be humiliated and did nothing. I signed the severance, I said, my voice calm and flat. You have 5 years of rent and food covered. After that, you are on your own. Consider it interest on the 20 years of upkeep you claim I owe you. 5 years? Mr. Smith gasped. But the medical bills for Molly, the specialists, we need millions, Beverly. You're a Berkey now. You have billions. Why are you being so cruel? Cruel? I stepped closer, looking him in the eye. Cruel was framing me for embezzlement. Cruel was telling the police I instigated an assault. Cruel was watching your real daughter smash the only medicine that could have saved her life and laughing about it. We didn't know, Mrs. Smith wailed. We were just so happy to have our biological daughter back. We thought you were jealous. I was never jealous of Molly, I said. I felt sorry for her. She was so obsessed with taking what I had that she forgot to build anything of her own. And you were so obsessed with blood that you threw away the only person who actually cared about your future. The heavy oak doors at the end of the hall swung open. Wiley Fullerton walked in. He looked even worse than the Smiths. His firm had fired him that morning. No one wanted to work with the architect who had dumped a Berkey heiress for a bankrupt fraud. Beverly, Wiley said, his voice cracking. I talked to the board. If you just come back to the company for 1 day, just 1 day to settle the investors, I can save my job. I'll do anything. I'll marry you tomorrow. I'll tell everyone Molly forced me to leave you. I almost laughed. Wiley, look around. Do you really think I want to marry a man who only sees me as a paycheck? You didn't leave me for Molly. You left me for what you thought was a bigger pile of money. Well, the pile is gone, and so am I. I turned to Mr. Miller. Give them the checks and show them out. I have a press conference in 20 minutes. Beverly, wait, Mr. Smith screamed as the guards began to lead them away. You can't do this. We're your family. No, I said, turning my back on them. You were my employers, and your contract has been terminated for cause. As they were led out, the hall became silent. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't Davis this time. I turned and saw a woman with elegant features and eyes that matched my own. She was draped in a shawl of fine cashmere, and her face was wet with tears. Mom, I whispered. Caddy Berkey, my biological mother, pulled me into a hug. She smelled like lilies and home. I heard everything, she sobbed. I'm so sorry we didn't find you sooner. I'm so sorry you had to be so strong for so long. It's okay, Mom, I said, burying my face in her shoulder. It made me who I am. Well, who you are is a Berkey, a booming voice said. I looked up to see Berkey Bowers, my biological father. He looked like an older version of Davis, powerful and commanding. He walked over and placed a hand on my head. And a Berkey doesn't just survive. We lead. He handed me a small remote control device. The press is waiting outside the gates. The whole world wants to know who the new head of Aurelia Medical is. Are you ready to tell them? I looked at my mother, my father, and my brother. For the first time in my life, I wasn't an imposter or a fake. I was home. I'm ready, I said. We walked out onto the grand balcony overlooking the estate. Thousands of cameras flashed at once, the light blindingly bright. I saw the Smith family standing by the gate, being loaded into a cheap taxi, watching me from afar. They looked like ants. I stepped up to the microphone. My name is Beverly Berkey, I said, my voice carrying across the grounds and into every television in the city. And today, the era of lies is over. Aurelia Medical is officially open, and our first mission is to ensure that medicine belongs to the people who need it, not the people who scream the loudest. The crowd erupted. I felt the power of the Berkey name behind me, but more importantly, I felt the power of my own truth. I looked down at my hand. The ring finger was bare, but my heart was full. I had lost a foster family and a fiancé, but I had gained an empire and my soul. The Smiths were a memory. My future was just beginning. As the press conference ended, Davis leaned in and whispered, "The stock for the Smith Group just hit 0. They're officially delisted." "Good," I said, looking out at the horizon. Now, let's go save some lives. The sun rose over the Berkey estate, casting long golden shadows across the manicured gardens. For the first time in my life, I didn't wake up to the sound of an alarm or the crushing anxiety of a looming Smith Group crisis. I woke up in a room that smelled of fresh jasmine, draped in sheets of Egyptian cotton that felt like a cloud. I walked to the balcony of my suite. Below, I could see the bustle of the estate preparing for the evening's grand gala, my official coming home ball. After the press conference, the world knew me as a Berkey, but tonight was the private celebration where the elite would witness the transition from the disgraced fake heiress to the most powerful young woman in the country. A knock at the door preceded my mother, Katie Berkey. She walked in holding a jewelry box made of dark velvet. "You look peaceful, Beverly," she said, her eyes brimming with maternal pride. "I spent 20 years looking at your baby pictures, wondering if you were safe. To see you standing here, so strong and capable, it's more than I ever prayed for." "I had to be capable to survive them, Mom," I said, stepping back inside. "But standing here with you, I feel like I can finally breathe." Katie opened the box. Inside was a diamond tiara, delicate and intricate, shaped like laurel leaves. "Your father had this commissioned the day we got the DNA results. He said our daughter isn't just a business mogul, she's our princess. He wants you to wear it tonight." I touched the cold, sparkling stones. To the Smiths, I was a tool. To the Berkeys, I was a treasure. The difference was staggering. The evening arrived with a grandeur I had never imagined. A fleet of black luxury SUVs and silver sports cars lined the mile-long driveway. The ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. Every major political figure, tech giant, and old-money socialite was in attendance. I stood at the top of the grand staircase, wearing a dress of shimmering silver that flowed behind me like moonlight. Beside me stood my father, Berkey Bowers, and my brother Davis. "Ready?" Davis whispered, offering his arm. "Ready," I replied. As we descended, the room fell into a hushed silence. These were the same people who, just a month ago, would have snubbed me at a charity event. Now, they bowed their heads as I passed. In the corner of the room, near the buffet, I spotted a few familiar faces who had been invited as a courtesy to witness their own irrelevance. Wiley Fullerton was there, looking thin and desperate. He was trying to talk to a junior executive from a tech firm, but the man walked away mid-sentence when he saw us approaching. Wiley's eyes met mine. He looked like he wanted to run to me, to beg for one last chance to ride my coattails, but the two Berkey guards flanking me made it clear that he was no longer even in my orbit. He was a ghost from a past life I had already forgotten. My father stepped onto the podium, his voice booming without the need for a microphone. "Friends, colleagues, and rivals," he began, his gaze sweeping the room. "For 20 years there has been a hole in the Berkey family heart. We were told our daughter was gone. We were told she was lost to the world, but a Berkey is never truly lost. They are only waiting for the right moment to reclaim their throne." He reached out a hand to me. I stepped forward, the diamond tiara catching the light of 1,000 crystal chandeliers. "I present to you my daughter, Beverly Berkey, the CEO of Aurelia Medical and the future of the Berkey Empire." The applause was deafening. I looked out at the crowd and saw Sadie Bray in the front row, cheering so loudly her glasses were sliding down her nose. I saw Dr. Paul, who gave me a respectful nod. But then the heavy doors at the back of the ballroom opened. A man and a woman in tattered, dusty clothes tried to push past the ushers. It was Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They looked like they hadn't slept in days. Mr. Smith was clutching a crumpled piece of paper, the severance agreement I had signed. "Beverly, you have to listen," Mr. Smith screamed, his voice cracking with desperation. "The hospital is kicking Molly out. They say she's a liability. You have the cure. You have the money. You can't let your own sister die in a hallway." The music stopped. The elite guests turned, whispering behind their hands at the unsightly scene. My father's face turned into a mask of ice. "Security, remove these trespassers." "Wait," I said, my voice quiet but firm. I walked toward the back of the room. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I stopped 10 feet away from the people who had raised me. "I gave you enough money to keep her in a private facility for 5 years, I said. "Where did the money go, Mr. Smith?" He looked at the floor, his face turning a guilty shade of red. I I tried to short sell the Berkey stock. I thought if I could drive the price down, I could make enough to buy back the company. I lost it all, Beverly, every cent. I felt a cold wave of realization. Even at the very end, he was still gambling. He was still trying to steal from me instead of taking care of the daughter he claimed to love more than anything. You gambled away your daughter's life to try and spite me, I said. Please, Mrs. Smith sobbed, falling to her knees. We're sorry. We were wrong about Molly. She's a monster. She's been screaming at us, blaming us for everything. You were always the good one, Beverly. Please come home. I am home, I said, gesturing to the magnificent hall and the family standing behind me. I turned to the head of security. Escort them out and call the hospital. Arrange for Molly to be moved to a hospice center. I will pay the bill directly to the facility. They are not to touch a single penny of it. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Smith cried, trying to reach for my hand. Don't thank me, I said, looking him in the eye. I'm doing it for the girl I used to be, who once thought you were a good man, but as for you, if I ever see you near my family again, the severance trust won't be the only thing you lose. I'll make sure you spend the rest of your lives in a cell for the perjury you committed. The guards grabbed them by the arms and dragged them out of the ballroom. Their screams faded as the heavy doors slammed shut. I turned back to the guests. I didn't let a single tear fall. I walked back to my father and brother. Let's continue the celebration, I said. We have a world to change. The music started again, louder and more triumphant than before. I spent the rest of the night dancing with my brother and talking strategy with the brightest minds in the country. As the party wound down, I stood alone on the terrace, looking out at the city lights. I could see the dark silhouette of the Smith Group building in the distance. Its lights turned off, its name removed from the skyline. I touched the laurel leaves of my tiara. I had been trash to them. I had been a fake. But as I looked at my reflection in the glass, I didn't see a fake. I saw a woman who had been forged in fire and came out as gold. The princess is back, I whispered to the night, and she's just getting started. The grand mahogany doors of the newly minted Aurelia Medical Headquarters swung open, revealing a lobby that looked more like a gallery of the future than a corporate office. Sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, illuminating a massive digital wall that tracked the live distribution of the ALS cure to clinics across the globe. I walked across the polished floor, the sound of my heels echoing with a rhythm of total confidence. Beside me, Sadie Bray was buzzing with energy, holding a tablet that showed our stock prices soaring. We weren't just a success, we were a revolution. The final phase of the rollout is complete, Sadie said, her eyes beaming behind her glasses. We've successfully treated 10,000 patients in the first week. The recovery rates are off the charts, Beverly. We did it. We're just getting started, Sadie, I replied. I want the pediatric wing open by next month. No family should have to go through what I saw in those state wards. We reached the top floor, the executive suite. As I stepped into my office, I saw a familiar figure standing by the window. Wiley Fullerton turned around, his face pale and eyes sunken. He looked like a shadow of the man I had once planned to marry. How did you get past security, Wiley? I asked, my voice flat. I begged the manager at the cafe, Mr. Max, Wiley whispered. He remembered me. Beverly, please. I'm living in a motel. My firm blacklisted me. I have nothing. I just need a job, any job. I'll work in the mailroom. I'll be your driver. Just don't let me starve. I sat down behind my desk and looked at him. I remembered the day he threw the engagement ring on his dashboard. I remembered how he told me I was just a girl from an orphanage who got lucky. The mailroom requires a background check for integrity, Wiley, I said. And my driver needs to be someone I can trust with my life. You don't qualify for either. I was blinded by Molly. She tricked me, he cried, moving toward the desk. The door opened, and Davis stepped in, his presence immediately filling the room with an icy tension. He didn't say a word, he just looked at Wiley. Wiley froze, then slowly backed away, realizing that the world he once occupied was now a fortress he couldn't enter. Security is waiting downstairs to escort you out, Mr. Fullerton, Davis said. If you set foot on this property again, I'll ensure your blacklisting becomes permanent and legal. Wiley slumped his shoulders and walked out, his head bowed. He was the final ghost to be exorcised. "Our parents are waiting in the boardroom," Davis said, his expression softening as he looked at me. "It's time." I walked into the boardroom, where Berkey Bowers and Katty Berkey sat at the head of the table. They stood up the moment I entered. "The Smith Group assets have been fully liquidated," my father announced. "The building was sold at auction this morning. I bought it, Beverly. It's yours. You can tear it down or turn it into a park. Whatever you want." "I want it to be a free clinic," I said. "Let's build something that actually helps people on the spot where they tried to destroy me." My mother walked over and took my hands in hers. "You've done more in 30 days than most people do in a lifetime. We are so proud to call you a Berkey." "I'm proud to be one," I said. That evening, I took one last trip to the outskirts of the city. I pulled up to a quiet, clean hospice center funded by the Berkey Foundation. I walked down the hall to a private room. Inside, Molly Smith sat in a specialized chair. She was thin, her skin sallow, and her eyes were fixed on a television mounted to the wall. On the screen, a news report was showing my face, talking about the success of Aurelia Medical. She couldn't move her head, but she shifted her eyes to look at me. There was no fire left in them, only a deep, hollow regret. "I kept my word, Molly," I said softly. "You have the best care. You have the medicine. You'll live. But you'll have to watch the world I built from this room." Her lips trembled, but no words came out. She had spent her life trying to steal a spotlight, only to end up in the shadows of the person she despised. I walked out of the room and into the fresh night air. The city lights were twinkling below, a vast sea of possibilities. For 20 years, I had been Beverly Smith, the girl who worked for a love that was never real. For 30 days, I had been the fake heiress who became a target. But today, as I climbed into the car where my real family waited, I knew exactly who I was. I was Beverly Berkey. I was the queen of an empire, the daughter of legends, and the architect of my own destiny. The foster parents who treated me like trash were gone, and the billionaire parents who reclaimed me were here to stay. The car sped away into the night, leaving the ruins of the past behind. My story didn't end with a revenge, it ended with a throne. And I was going to rule it with a heart of gold and a mind of steel.